Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is February 5th, 2026. We are going to read from Genesis chapter 38 and Mark chapter 8. All right, so Genesis, we just saw Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers who were jealous. Uh, and we want to see there, so we have 12 brothers of Jacob, Israel. Firstborn is Reuben, should have been the heir, but he sleeps with one of his dad's concubines, so that lets him out. Next up would be Levi and Simeon. When their sister is raped, they don't just go out for justice, they go out for a massacre and a slaughter. So promise isn't going to go to them. We see that Israel favors favors Joseph with that multicolored coat. But now Joseph is gone, so who's next up? Judah, we're going to see. Now we saw that Judah, it was really his idea to sell Joseph into slavery rather than kill him. So not a perfect person. And again, we're going to see that he's not perfect. But we're going to see that he does accept God's will, or he's getting there anyway, in this story that we're going to get in Genesis 38. So let's go ahead and read. It came to pass at that time that Judah departed from his brothers and visited a certain Edolamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he married her and went into her. So now we have Hebrews, Israelites marrying Canaanite women. We saw how the lengths they went to find a non-Canaanite wife for Jacob, for Isaac. So she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Er. She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son, and called his name Shelah. He was at Chezib when she bore him. Then Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. A little bit of sin, a little more sin, a little more sin. So we see that pattern continue. Verse 8, and Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and marry her and raise up an heir to your brother. That's that idea of a Levirate marriage. That if a husband dies before there's a heir, then his next closest kinsman would marry his widow, bear a son. That son is technically considered now the son of the first husband. And he inherits what the first husband would have. After that, it would become your children and your inheritance after that. But Onan doesn't want to do that. Why? Because in verse 9, but Onan knew that the hair would not be his, and it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife that he emitted on the ground, lest he should give a hair to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, therefore he killed him also. So he's failing to do his duty, and it was an important duty here, especially in the early stages of God developing Israel into a nation, because we want the inheritance. We want the tribes to stay the tribes. We want to establish the clans. We just saw Esau and Edom. He just said clans and chieftains. We're getting to that, but we can't get there if we have Onan failing to do his duty and saying, nope, I'm not going to give you a hair. I'm not going to do it. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what God wants me to do. I ain't going to do it. And the Lord kills him. Verse 11, then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shelah is grown, for he said, lest he also die like his brothers. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. So now it would be the third son's duty to give a hair for the first husband, because now he's the next in line. And Judah says, well, things have not been going well. And he's the one that's disobedient now. Now he's going to say, no, I'm not going to give my son to you. It solves the problem. Well, it doesn't solve the problem we started with, that there's no hair, and it's up to him as the clan leader, the tribe leader, to make sure that Levirate idea is happening the way God wants it to. Verse 12, now in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Edomite. And it was told Tamar, saying, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. When Judah her scheme now, so again, more schemes, so more sins leading to sins. But she's saying, hey, you know what, if you're not going to give me to Shelah, the next one in line is you now that your wife died. And if you're not going to do the right thing on your own, I'm going to make you do the right thing. Verse 15, when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face. Then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come in to you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So he's the one that initiates this. She was just sitting there. So she said, what will you give me that you may come in to me? And he said, I will send a young goat from the flock. So she said, will you give me a pledge till you send it? And then he said, what pledge shall I give you? So she said, your signet and cord and your staff that is in your hand. And then he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. So she arose and went away and laid aside her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend the Edomite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot who is openly by the roadside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. So he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also the men of the place said there was no harlot in this place. Then Judah said, let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. Hey, where's the prostitute I slept with? We're not going to do that. Verse 23, and Judah said, let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her. Hey, we tried. And it came to pass about 3 months after that, Judah was told, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry. So she's pregnant. Everyone's starting to realize, hey, she's pregnant. She's supposed to be a widow. So Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. That's the punishment for getting born out of wedlock, being a prostitute. Excuse me. When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man to whom these belong, I am with child. And she said, please determine whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. So Judah acknowledged them and said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Shelah, my son. And he never knew her again. So he recognizes, oops, yeah, I got caught. I was trying to preserve my son and not send him there, and she took what was rightfully hers, a husband to bear a child, to be the heir of her first husband heir. But he never sleeps with her again. He says, okay, that's it, we're done with that. Now it came to pass, verse 27, at the time for giving birth, that behold, twins were in her womb. And so it was when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, this one came out first. Then it happened, as he drew back his hand, that his brother came out unexpectedly. And she said, how did you break through? This breach be upon you. Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Out of all that deceit, harlotry, immorality, evil, disobedience, we get Perez, who's an ancestor to Jesus. God uses evil for good sometimes. Let's go ahead, we're going to read Mark chapter 8. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat. Now Jesus is in the Decapolis area, the Gentile area, the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus called his disciples to him, and he said to them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar. Then his disciples answered him, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? He asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. So he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the multitude. They also had a few small fish, and having blessed them, He said to them also before them. He said to set them also before them. There we go. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. Now those who had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away, immediately got into the boat with his disciples, and came to the region of Dalmanutha. All right, so 4,000. Now, in the 5,000, we were told it was strictly 5,000 men, so they didn't count the women and children. 4,000 here probably counts the women and children. We're in the Gentile area, so smaller number, because he goes to the Jews first. We see that the disciples completely forgot what he did with the 5,000 and didn't expect him to do it again, but he does it again here. He gets the food, and Jesus is the source of the abundance. He divides and hands it out, he divides and hands it out, and divides it and hands it out, and he just keeps doing that. And there's always something to divide and hand out. Verse 11, then the Pharisees came out and began to dispute with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, testing him. But he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Assuredly I say to you, no sign shall be given to this generation. So even after doing that, the Pharisees say, well, just one sign. Just give us one sign. Okay, I fed 5,000 people with a couple of fish sandwiches. Well, just one more sign. Okay, well, I'll feed 4,000 people with even less fish sandwiches. Oh, just one more sign. I'm casting demons out of people that have had demons all their life. No, just one more. I'm healing people who were deaf and blind and dumb all their lives, and you know it. Well, just give us one more sign, and then we'll believe you. And Jesus is saying, you're not getting any more signs. I'm the sign. If you don't get me as the sign, there are no more signs. You don't need any more signs. If you get that, you don't need any more signs. If you don't get that, you'll never believe anything anyway. Verse 13, and he left them, and getting into the boat, again departed to the other side. So he's gone back over to the north and west side where the Jews lived. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, and they did not have more than 1 loaf with them in the boat. And he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. So they're hung up on this idea of not having enough food, even though Jesus just showed them that in him is abundance, not once, but twice. But Jesus, being aware of it, what they were talking about being wrong, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Is your heart still hardened? Having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said to him, 12. Also when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said, 7. So he said to them, how is it you do not understand? Then he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him, and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on them, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hands on his eyes again, made him look up, and he was restored and saw everything clearly. Then he sent him away to his house, saying, neither go into the town, nor tell anyone in the town. All right, so we get another miracle, healing miracle, that looks different than most of the rest of the ones we had. This one looks like the one we saw yesterday, with that physical component to it that we don't see usually. And we say, hey, there's that spit again, that magical spit that cures everything, at least as far as your mother or tissue are concerned. So essentially what we see is he does the physical thing, and he's showing us, hey, you know what, some of these illnesses, they're entirely physical. Some of these illnesses are entirely spiritual, and there's a lot that are in between, and we're seeing one that's in between. So the first thing he's going to do is that physical healing, and he's going to do it like they would physically heal somebody. And what's the result? Well, things are still blurry. All right, that's because the physical healing isn't everything you need to have happen. You need the spiritual healing, and that was the second thing that he did. And that was the second part of this healing, and now he's fully restored. Physical healing is great, but without the spiritual healing, we're not, that's what we need. That's what Jesus came to give us. That's what he came to die on the cross for. He didn't come to cure us physically. That's why we have doctors and medicines. It's the spiritual healing that only he can heal. That's why he came. That's why he died on a cross, and that's why he was resurrected. And that's the only miracle we need if we believe that. Verse 27, now Jesus and his disciples went out to the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and on the road he asked his disciples, saying to them, who do men say that I am? So they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. It's exactly what we saw when Herod, in the story when Herod was going to kill John the Baptist, and he was thinking, oh, Jesus is him reincarnated, he's coming back to haunt me. So that's the people, that's the unbelieving world. They want to believe he's everything except what we're getting ready for Peter to declare. Verse 29, he, Jesus, said to them, his disciples, but who do you say that I am? And Peter answered, and he said to him, you are the Christ. And he strictly warned them that they should tell no one about him. Not ready to be revealed yet, because once that revelation comes out, we're going to quickly have that last week. And again, Peter, as the leader of the disciples, they understand he's Christ. They understand he's God, but they're still struggling with what that means, because they're still trying to look at it through their own lenses and not through the lens of God, the lens of Jesus. Verse 31, and he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. So the teaching now changes. Once Jesus gets that confession out of his disciples that, no, we're sure that you're the Christ. We still don't know what it means, but we know you're him. Now Jesus says, okay, we've graduated kindergarten. We're getting the master course now in what's going to happen and what you need to do and what I need to do and how that's going to play out. Verse 32, he spoke the word openly. Then Peter took him aside and he began to rebuke him. There's that not quite understanding what's going on yet. But when he had turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. And that's where the mismatch is between the disciples and Christ right now. They're still thinking of it in their fleshy, fallen perspective, and they're not quite up to the spiritual part yet. Verse 34, when he had called the people to himself with his disciples also, he said to them, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? And what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. And he said to them, assuredly I say to you that there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the kingdom of God present with power. I added that last verse. We went a little into 9. We're going to see 9 tomorrow. We're going to get what Jesus means by that, the way he ended that. But he's letting them know, hey, it's not going to be roses and unicorns and rainbows to follow me. Not for them, not for us. It's going to be persecution. People, they hate Jesus. Why? Because Jesus represents everything that they don't like. Jesus is telling them, hey, what you're doing it wrong. You are hurting people. You are the enemy of God with what you're doing. And if they're the enemy of God, they're the enemy of Jesus. And if we follow Jesus, then they're going to make us their enemies too. But you know what? We have a great reward waiting for us. And it's all worth it in the end. May God bless the reading of his word. May God bless you. Bye.